Hi, my name is Father Joe Menkhaus, and this is the St. Bernadette Parish Westlake podcast. As a parish family, this podcast is a way that we share our story of faith in Jesus Christ. Join us as we dive deeper into the mysteries of our Catholic faith and the reasons for our joy, especially our hope in the love of God. Hello, brothers and sisters of St. Bernadette. This is your parochial vicar, Father Joe Menkhaus, with another episode of the St. Bernadette Parish Westlake podcast, joined once again by co-host Trapper Jack. Trapper.
I sense excitement in the room.
I am very excited. I also sense trouble.
Yes. Right here in River City. No, wait a minute. That's an old play. Never mind.
See, I'm thinking of the Taylor Swift song. I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
There was that. Because this is the guy who introduced himself as Trouble.
His name is Trouble.
Yes. And his lovely wife.
Mrs. Trouble. My friends, today we got Mr. and Mrs. Stephen and Kate Kasik with us on the podcast. Everybody, let's welcome Stephen and Kate to the podcast.
Yay, I'll applaud myself.
Oh, there you go.
Of course.
So we were all in Italy together.
We were.
And who first was it our tour guide that called you Trouble?
That was Miriam.
Yes, it was.
The tour guide. I have no idea why. I followed all of the rules.
Well, but it actually went back to the plane. It went back to the plane where he was, I don't know, maybe looking a little suspicious, and the the flight attendant said, "Oh, well, this one looks like he could be in some trouble here. This one looks like a little bit sketchy," and they were joking, of course.
Sketchy.
Was that when it started? It was on
That's
the
when
plane.
it's on the plane.
So Miriam just picked
there
up
was
on
that,
that-
and then
on
Miriam
that vibe.
just took
Yeah.
that later, not knowing. I think
It was also the way she said it, though. She said, like, he is trouble.
he is
trouble.
trouble.
With her
There's
French
always
accent.
one. What'd I do?
Oh, my gosh. Well, you guys have been trouble ever since I met you, so...
Thank you.
Well, friends, I've gotten to know Steve and Kate over the years, and many of you have actually gotten to know Kate especially because she's a cantor here at St. Bernadette's, choir member, faithful member for how long? A long time?
Back in 2020, like right before the COVID.
Okay,
so
it's been a while.
Well, for the choir, and then I've been here as a parishioner since 2015.
Wow, okay. But this is not where you grew up, right?
No, I grew up in Lakewood. I went to St. Luke, also St. Cyril's, which is now Transfiguration.
It was Transfigured.
Transfiguration.
From Cyril's.
From Cyril's, yes.
Okay, and Steve, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Macedonia, Summit County, between a couple communities on the east side.
Okay.
Between my mom and dad. My mom was in Macedonia. My dad was in Twinsburg. So.
And have you actually grown up?
Well, I got older in those areas.
That's more correct.
I will never admit to being a grown-up.
Okay, just check. All right.
People ask if we have children, and I say, I have Steve.
A lot of marriages are like that. Yeah, a lot of marriages. Okay.
I need an adult.
So, obviously, you know that the St. Bernadette Parish Westlake podcast is devoted to hearing the stories of faith of our parishioners. And so, there's a part of your guys' mutual story that I do want to jump into. But before we get there, I'm wondering if you could share with us just a little bit about your faith life growing up. Maybe, Kate, we could start with you.
Sure, I am a cradle Catholic, so I did the whole kindergarten through high school, Catholic school. High school is Catholic Girls' School. Shout out to St. Augustine, which is no more.
LCA, right?
LCA, woohoo! And so, yeah, my mom took us to church every week. She sang in the choir, and then my dad would sit off to the side with my sister and me, and that's usually how we attended Mass. And if we weren't there, we would be over with other relatives at another church, and it was usually a family thing. But yeah, that's kind of it. My dad, not Catholic, but always willing to sit in the pews with us and amuse the kids as as we were at Mass.
And so, did you stick with your faith your whole life, or did you fall away, and was there something that brought you back?
There were a few years where I didn't go to mass as often. I worked on the road for a while. I toured around, and I just didn't make the effort. I will say that now. I feel bad because there's a lot of really cool churches around. I think it would have been awesome to see some of those churches in the U.S. had I actually made that a priority. But
Because at the time you were working as a...
I was company manager with the company that does Sesame Street Live. But at the time, back in the year 2000, I was over on Bear in the Big Blue House Live. So if you're familiar with that, I went to school thinking I was going to manage, I don't know, like rock and roll, and I got Muppets instead, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
It worked out.
That's show business.
So then, I came back to Cleveland and started going back to church a little bit more. And my mom said one day, "Hey, why don't we join the choir over at St. Bernadette?" Now, she was still a Transfiguration parishioner at the time, but I had been trying to steal her. Haha, kidding.
You
or was
won.
I? But yeah, we joined the choir, and that was back in 2020. It was around the COVID time, so we didn't get to do much. But yeah, we've been here since, and I think that pretty much solidified me being here every week. And then basically, I kind of expanded from there. When we were going to get married.
So before we get there...
Okay,
Pause
before we
on
get
tape.
there.
Because we're going to go back to the word trouble again when that comes
no.
into it.
All right, Steve, so tell us about your faith life growing up.
So mine isn't as detailed as Kate's because I had a bit of a gap. I was baptized Catholic back in and then through some family things that happened, there was a divorce in my family, which kind of pushed us away from the church where I was baptized. So there was a little break in my church attendance, about 43 years. And then I met Kate, and from what I understand, we're going to get to that though, for our marriage prep, brought me here because Kate really wanted to have our wedding here. And I was fully on board because I was like, I probably should go back.
Do you remember the first time she said, "Why don't you go to Mass with me this Sunday?" Do you remember the first time?
I remember...
I think that's a yes.
Sounds like
Kate.
he remembers.
Kate remembers.
I remember it was a mass before the festival. It was an outdoor mass, and I'm 40 plus years removed, so I'm sitting way in the back trying to not blend in, to not be noticed because I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm sitting in the back, and there's this guy. He's sitting on a lawnmower, one of those big industrial lawnmowers, and there's this young guy sitting there, and he's got this iPad, and he's adjusting levels on it and stuff. And I look over, and he kind of gives me a big happy smile. Like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Hey," and I was like, "I don't know who this guy is. Who's this guy?" Well, that was Father Joe. So that's how my first meeting with Father Joe, and I found that out afterwards, and I was like, "Oh, he seems like a really nice guy. Maybe it isn't as scary as I thought it was going to be."
But that wasn't the first time I asked him, because
mean?
we
Let's
were
hear it.
together many years before we got engaged and had the whole marriage discussion. So I would, ask him on a Saturday night or whatever, just because, "Hey, I'm going to, in the morning, go to church. You maybe want to go with me?" And he would usually say something like, what's the word? "Are you trying to proselytize?" I can't say that. Proselytize me. And he would joke around. And I'd be like, "Look, you could come with me or not." And then he'd say something like, "No, I've got to go to the Church of the Holy Pillow and St. Mattress."
It was so early.
Something like that.
Hey, at least you were honest.
But, I kept inviting him, and, whatever. He's on his own journey. I'm going to keep going to church. So that's that. But
What
yeah.
finally got you to go?
Maybe this is where we start the story.
Honestly, it was at, I think it was your parents' 50-year wedding anniversary where Father Phil, we were had him at our table, and I was explaining to him what happened when I was growing up and how our family fell away from the church, and getting into more detail of what that involved. And he said, "Well, you need to get in touch with me. We need to have an adult conversation," which terrified me because I didn't know what that meant. So when Kate had mentioned that she wanted to get married in the church, and I was fully on board with that, but I didn't know what that entailed since I'd been away for so long. So that involved having meetings with Father Joe.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I met both of you. So, Kate, I don't know if you want to share your side of the story.
Her version of events.
My version of events. Well, I had a previous marriage and didn't really know where to start with the process of, I loved this guy.
Oh.
We weren't engaged, but
How could you not?
The divorce had actually happened many, many years before. I just had never gotten it annulled. I didn't know what the process would be. And so I asked Father Joe, if we could sit down, and told him a little bit about.
It was my first annulment as a priest. I very vividly remember sitting in these chairs right here, thinking, okay, I remember what they told me in class. Let's see if I can do it.
You know what? You came across as very confident, like you knew what you were doing. So, I explained, hey, I had this. I was married in the Catholic Church previously. It didn't work out. It was like a decade ago. What do I do? I like this guy, or, if it's not this guy, maybe somewhere down the line. That's something that I will need to investigate. And we kind of went into some paperwork from there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and got your process started and moving along. And then when we got your affirmative decision, we had a meeting with both of you. It was the first time that I think I remember meeting you, Steve. I guess I said hello to you from the lawnmower.
Right.
But I remember we sat down and we were filling out the yellow sheet, and I was asking the questions, and then something shocking happened. Do you remember what
Are you talking about the curveballs that I threw at you?
Yes.
Have you previously been married? And I was like, oh yeah. Is that going to be a problem? Because, well, how many? Just the one time? Perhaps there were two.
I remember thinking, though, we won't have to go through anything that's a big deal because it wasn't a Catholic church you got married in. So my brain is saying, we don't have to go through an annulment process. It'll just whatever. But Father Joe's like, was he baptized Catholic? Yeah. He's like, no,
Uh-oh.
He's one of ours. And we went, what does that mean now?
Because there was the assumption if you weren't married in the church, then it's less troublesome, shall we say?
See, trouble.
I'm a trained professional. So doesn't it lessen the degree?
It does, yes.
Okay.
So in the Catholic Church, when you get married, whether you're getting married at the Catholic Church or in a courthouse or in a field or whatever, as a baptized Catholic, you're expected to follow the form of Catholic marriage, which is to get married in front of a priest or deacon in a Catholic church. So in the case of Kate, who had a previous marriage, you guys got married in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
We would call this a formal case, meaning everything that was supposed to happen to get married Catholic happened, except at the moment that the exchange of vows happened, when they said, I take you forever, blah, 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 all that. In the moment that happened, there was an essential element missing for a Catholic marriage to be legitimate. Now, all Catholic marriages, the husband and wife, or the groom and bride, need to be giving themselves freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. And basically, if one of those elements is in some way missing at the moment of consent being exchanged, then you have what's called the ability to annul that marriage, or to rule that the marriage never actually took place. Even though it looked like it happened, there were a man and a woman, and they said the words, and everybody showed up in their dresses, and then there was a big party afterwards, even though it looked like a wedding.
And it was legal.
Right.
It's a legal
It's a
marriage.
legal bond.
Yeah.
We say the sacramental bond never took because there was something missing. Free, total, faithful, or fruitful was missing.
Even
Which-
if we didn't know that at the time.
And which is it usually of that? Because now you have to get into descriptions of what that means.
I can't say for sure because I've only worked for about a month in the tribunal period. But I do remember there was one set of grounds called grave lack of discretion. And I mean, in layman's terms, it basically means immaturity. That one would come up a lot, that there was some element.
Yeah, Steve with trouble laughs.
Steve giggles.
There was some element of maturity that had not yet been reached by one of the parties involved in the marriage. That one came up a lot.
So, Kate, you already have grounds now, just so you know.
I did the wedding. I don't remember any grounds.
Look out! Look out! It's going to get serious now. And you know how many people listening right now have been through this, or pondering it, right?
Right.
Or
But-
don't know they need it.
Right.
That too.
So then free, total, faithful, fruitful. I mean, fruitful alone, you have to be open to having kids. And so if one of the spouses went into marriage still within childbearing age, totally closed off to the idea of getting married, to the idea of having kids in their marriage, that's grounds for an annulment. Free, total, maybe total, okay? Maybe you didn't tell your wife that you've got some massive bank account hanging out over on the other side of the world that you've been using to invest in unspeakable ways, right?
Steve,
I plead the fifth.
If you're keeping something, then you're not giving yourself totally.
Kidding.
So,
Secrets.
right.
Yeah.
And so what Kate experienced was a formal case. So you're looking at the fact that there was something, they went and got married according to the Catholic form, but there was something missing.
Now there's Steve.
Now
What the
there's-
heck is Steve?
I ask myself that every day.
I love this couple. Keep going. Here we go.
Steve is
boy.
what we call lack of form. So we had formal.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had formal. Now we've got lack of form, which means Steve was a baptized Catholic. He's baptized Catholic. But when he got married, he did not follow the form required for marriage. So he did not go to a church or get married in front of a priest or deacon. Instead, I don't know if you want to tell us what you did instead.
Sure. One of them was at a courthouse.
Yep.
Just, civil. All we did is go into the courthouse, sign the forms, and walk back out. And it was, congratulations, you're married. Go out and have fun.
Okay.
The second one was done by a place called Hillbilly Weddings.
I was going to say, I remember this
And
being more interesting.
it was in a
my.
cabin in the woods. And I'm going to do air quotes, our minister was wearing overalls. And he had a long gray beard, which, of course, that's fine, have a long gray beard. But he still had chunks of food in his beard while he was doing our, again, air quotes, ceremony. So
Who
that was-
chooses hillbilly weddings, and was alcohol involved?
And you got a party
I
gift, too.
absolutely chose that
Yeah,
because
you chose it.
I saw that on the internet and I went, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you got
Yeah.
you got a parting gift, too.
Oh, yeah. He had just been out trout fishing, and he said, I have fresh trout. Do you want fresh trout for tonight? You can grill it up. I'm like, oh, yeah, fresh trout just caught out of a mountain stream, of course. And after our, air quotes, ceremony, he hands me 2 full trout, just head, scales, fins, just hands them to me, wrapped in newspaper, and says, here you go. Well, I mean, we're on vacation. I mean, what am I doing with a...
You're on a honeymoon, pal. And,
Yes.
And now you're cooking up fish.
And now I'm deheading and gutting a fish and scaling. So those got
So I just
repurposed.
I just Googled this, and it still exists.
Does it really?
Is it a real beard or is it a clip-on?
Oh,
what has
no,
it got
it's
there?
real.
A real beard, huh? Okay.
I mean, it's down in Gatlinburg, so this
Yeah,
is
man.
the real deal.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. and your wife at the time, she went, yeah. Not exactly.
Oh, notice they're no longer married.
Yeah.
Was that a lack of maturity? Was that one of the... So,
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah, okay.
you get the picture.
Yeah. There's a lack of form.
Didn't quite follow the form. So these are actually very easy cases. In Kate's case, you actually need witnesses to give testimony based on like their experience of both parties and their experience of the day and everything.
So,
Four.
may I ask
Four
what-
witnesses each.
Yeah.
What was it? May I ask what was lacking? Do you remember what was lacking?
You know, I don't remember what the official ruling was. I won't go into the whole story,
Right.
but it was basically two people who weren't aligned with life
Okay.
plans, life
Okay.
things.
And that can be you. I mean, you
And
could.
it was both of us.
Okay.
Like, we weren't aligned with each other how we should have been as a married couple should be
Okay.
in regards to putting each other first.
Well, it worked out great for me.
Yeah, yeah. The trout fisherman. Okay.
So for Steve, lack of form, right? As a Catholic, you're required to follow a form. They just didn't follow the form. So this is a much easier case. In Kate's case, those cases can take anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years usually. In Steve's case, those cases take approximately 3 months usually, as long as you've got all the documents.
In those cases, like in Steve's case, do you need the testimony of the ex as you do in a Catholic? You do, right? If you can get it, right?
Not even.
Really?
With these documentary cases, you're basically just providing evidence that you didn't follow the form, that you
Okay.
just went to the courthouse. And you provide your baptismal certificate so you can prove that there was no notation on it for a Catholic wedding. So they're really, really easy. Anytime you're getting an annulment, you're dealing with a petitioner and a respondent. And so in both Steve and Kate's cases, almost sounding like Kasik, they were the petitioners and their exes would have been the respondents. They would receive some element of like an explanation that like, hey, just so you know, your ex is doing this, but they don't have to respond to anything. So I think the point of your story that we're in now is Kate gets her annulment. They come to me to get married. We realize Steve needs a couple annulments. We get those taken care of. And then, bum, bum, ba-dum,
It was
bum, bum,
down to the wire.
What does that mean?
Yeah, explain that.
It was down to the wire because I was waiting for paperwork to come from Tennessee. I was waiting for paperwork to come from the clerk of courts and whatever county, Tennessee. It was difficult to track down who I needed to get the original marriage license. So
Guy in the overalls, or
right.
you know, where
The fish?
go for that.
Maybe the fish.
right, so it was
Well, and you had already had your venue booked,
right. We had the venue booked.
Ooh,
We had
and
everything paid for,
And a date and everything.
and it was
but not
just
the church, because I'm not allowed
Not
to book
officially.
a church.
it was just down to the wire. So it was, hey, hold this date if you can, if my paperwork comes in.
That's the big thing as a priest or deacon. You cannot book the church until you know that they're free to marry, which is why I would ask those questions. Do you have a previous spouse?
Did you keep the date kind of open?
I would keep them updated and say the date
Yeah.
is still open, but if someone else came along and said,
Yeah.
I want to get married that day, I would have to give it to them over them. Yeah.
So use this if you're planning on getting married as an exercise in what not to do.
Yeah, don't pay for your venue until you know you got the church date ready.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I got the interesting story that kind of goes along with this. I got the paperwork in the mail from Tennessee, from whatever county Gatlinburg is in Tennessee. The same day I got that paperwork, I had a completely unmarked, just plain white envelope in my mailbox, right behind from, whatever county, Tennessee. So I opened that, saw what I had been waiting for, and I was like, "What's this other envelope that just looks like it was hand delivered by somebody?" And I opened it up, and it was a rosary, and still to this day have no idea where it came from.
Wow.
So have no idea. I've asked around, and
Nothing written on the outside? Just,
nothing, no idea how it got there.
Well, and let's fast forward now to your faith life. At that point, were you going to mass with any regularity?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, so you guys get married, and Steve, this is where your journey really kind of takes off. Tell us what happens after that.
Well, this is when I started the OCIA process, is because after our wedding mass, I wanted to be able to participate because I just saw how beautiful it was, and was kind of like, oh yeah, I think I want to start coming back. So And after just meeting everyone we dealt with through this whole process, and just going with Kate to her choir practices, because I was a bit of a choir groupie, and everyone I met was just so welcoming. And
Including Lawnmower Man over here.
Exactly.
Everyone's a Steve groupie.
Everyone was so...
And a choir groupie.
Yeah, right. Everyone was so welcoming. So, and one of the agreements, I think it was kind of just a handshake agreement with Father Joe, was, hey, we're going to do this, but you're going through this OCIA process. You're getting confirmed, and we're bringing you fully in, right? And I said, of course, that's what I want.
Well, and I remember talking with Kate too, and just the shock and awe that you were experiencing. Tell us about that.
Well, we went from, do you want to go to Mass on Sunday? No, I have to go to Church of the Holy Pillow in St. Mattress, to Steve went to Mass by himself
Yes.
yesterday.
Yeah.
He usually, as he started going to Mass, he was very adamant about coming with me because he just didn't feel comfortable yet. He didn't know all the songs. He didn't know all the responses. He still didn't know a lot of people. And we get to yesterday where there was an OCIA event. What was it? Scrutiny.
Yeah.
And Steve wanted to go and support the scrutiny, but that was at 8:30. But I was cantering at the 10:30. He's like, I'll go myself. It's early, but I'll go on my own. And if you had told me when we met that this would be happening right now, I'd be like, okay, what?
I've even gone during the week.
So we went from nah to, okay, bye, see you later, I'm going to church. And I'm like, what happened? God happened here.
God happened, yeah.
You want miracles? I am gesturing towards Steve right now. and I think, I believe that you mean it too. It's not like you just went through the process to appease me.
He's not trying to impress you,
I
is
think
he?
in the process, you learned something.
Well, and you notice...
you know what? I learned something too, because let me tell you, going through OCIA as a cradle Catholic and as an adult, it's a completely different experience than when you learn that stuff when you're a kid.
If you learned it.
If you learned it
You
when
learned
you were
some
a
new.
kid.
You learned stuff, didn't you?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, going through it, because we're part of the OCIA team now, because, I went through it for leading up to confirmation. And then after it ended, I was like, well, what are we going to do with our Tuesday nights now? So we decided, you know what, we still want to be involved with this because, and like Kate says, every time you learn something new. So it's good to just keep learning. So we decided to just keep going, be involved as part of the team. So
That's the stunner.
every Tuesday night, we're going upstairs and meeting with our group and helping some of the newbies along.
So even if I've heard things a million times over the course of my life, there's always a new layer that makes my head explode in the best way possible. I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, let's talk too, Kate. I mean, you had a career change in the middle of all of
Oh my
this.
gosh, I did.
Tell us about that.
Where'd the Muppets go?
So I'm a theater kid. Majored in musical theater, actor, stage manager, was on tour in their management team.
And she sings a little bit too.
Sing a little bit too. I came back to Cleveland after being on tour. I was always looking for my next project because I just had so much fun on the stage or behind the stage, whatever it was. So I was heavily into the arts. I had a performing arts column where I reviewed anything and everything I could go see. I would go see everything from the Broadway touring shows at Playhouse Square to the, two-person monologue festival down at one of the tiny theaters you've never heard of. And I loved it, and it was my thing. And then I worked over at Cleveland State in their theater and dance department for 14 years as an admin. And I got to experience students at the beginning of their arts careers. And it was such a joy to watch young, creative people find themselves and to find their artistic voice. But things happened at Cleveland State, and they were offering buyouts to people who had been there for, it was like 10 years or more. And I don't know, I felt that little tug, kind of like, I need to do something else. I don't know what it is. But I should leave here, which surprised me because that was my life. Arts, you do it. Singing, dancing, acting. I'm the theater dork. So, yeah, I took that buyout and I had about 3 months of no work, and I prayed about it a lot, panicked about it a lot, because I just didn't know where I was supposed to be, and I just kept getting this back of my head going, you should work for the church. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So I talked to a lot of people. Father Joe kind of was an early guider in some suggestions for what to do. I had other friends that, were working in the church, and I just was patient and kept my eyes open for postings. And the job where I am now, I'm working for the Diocese of Cleveland, and I'd never even heard of the office that I work for now. When I was at CSU, I worked for the Office of Clergy and Religious. And even the job description, I'm like, what does this mean? I don't ask Father Joe, what would I be doing? I don't even know if you knew at the time.
I knew like one or two of the responsibilities. I knew one of them it was helping make new assignments for priests.
Yes. as we giggle. But yeah, I just didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I saw this listing for this position, and then did I tell you about it?
You texted me and you said, what is this? And I said, this would be pretty sweet.
And you were like, I had seen that, and I had thought about maybe that for you. And I went, So
it was one of those things where God had kind of like given me a little nudge, but I was like, I don't know. And then when she texted me, I was like, okay, I was not listening to God.
So, yeah, I just said, I don't know what this means, but sure, okay. And I applied, and I went through the interview process and everything, and I got the job. And that was just over a year ago today, after, like I said, I had 3 months of no work, and it was kind of floundering. And I was actually wrestling with, do I stay in the arts?
So what do you love about your new job? What are you doing that you love?
That I love? When I sneeze, I have like 7 priests that'll say, bless me at any given moment. I'm so blessed.
But if you cough, you get nothing. Just on the record.
True.
Yeah, I don't know what,
It's true.
just coughing is not smile.
You need an exorcist. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
You need a bishop.
You need a bishop. He's down the hall. It's a department that on the website explains it like ministers to the ministers of the diocese. So kind of following the journey of clergy from when they're in the seminary all the way through ordination, their
death.
careers, and death. So like Father Joe submitted his updated funeral plan to me.
Which you have to do.
And that was
right?
creepy.
Yeah. All priests have to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, ministering to the ministers.
Whatever they need.
Whatever they need. And yeah, part of the job is to, I don't have any great power here or anything, but I sit in the back of the room while other people talk about where priests go and what their assignments are and, what the course of their journeys are during ordination time.
That's a pretty interesting role.
It's super interesting, and everyone there's so darn nice.
You get to hear all the rumors before they are rumors.
I can neither confirm nor deny. So but yeah, I struggled with that. I thought, what if I never do theater again? Okay, God.
You're in theater.
It's like,
There's enough drama.
well, but
in
I'm
the
like,
church.
there's
theater.
no drama at St. Bernadette whatsoever. No, I just gave it to God. I was like, you know what? If this is where I'm supposed to be, I'll go there. And I don't know what that means, but guide me along.
Nice.
Wherever you need me.
And Steve, for the record, what do you do?
I work for Cuyahoga County. I am an operations supervisor for the 911 call center. So part of my job is in my office is where all of the wireless 911 calls for the counties go. I'd say that's 85% of my job is dealing with that network, dealing with the computer network that handles the 911 calls.
Make sure it all works efficiently, ideally. Yes.
Right, and making sure that everything is routed correctly, so that your cell phone knows if you're in Westlake or North Olmsted, or if we can pinpoint where you are based on, GPS magic and cell phone tower triangulation. So we keep an eye on that network.
And how many calls did you take on Friday during that crazy storm?
In 90 minutes, we took 1,219 calls during the windstorm.
Gosh.
And that's just in what area?
That's just cell phone calls for Cuyahoga County.
Wow.
So it was 90 minutes. I yelled out at one time, I think everyone in the county just called.
Yeah.
Because the last time I saw this happen was when we had the tornadoes.
Last summer.
Right, when every 911 line lit up all at the same time. So 911 lines, and then they all roll over to our admin lines, and they can roll over to our desk phones and be ringing in the break room, because if they have nowhere to go, they just go somewhere. So you just hear, we'll be sitting there in nice and peaceful evening, and suddenly everything happens at one time. So
Wow.
It's just kind of like,
You guys are a story. What's the takeaway out of all of this, Kate? I mean, when you look at your life, Steve's life, apart, together, where you've gone from Muppets to priests.
well, she always said that if she would have known me back in my day, that we probably wouldn't even have been friends. So
I was kind of a goody two-shoes, and Steve was a little bit of a rebel rouser in high school.
I was not a goody two-shoes.
So you had to wait for a calming of the waters a
Yes,
little bit,
I
right?
had to get all that trouble out of my system. See, call back.
Still there. Yeah. There
So
you
really,
go.
it sounds to me like the big takeaway is God's timing is everything, and that He has a plan.
Absolutely, because there's no reason I should even know this person right now just from walking down the street, or
We never would have run into each other.
it just,
And I think you also give people hope who, again, have parts of your story in their story. That maybe Father Joe, maybe he's in your future too. A little conversation that could kind of just give some peace of mind to a person at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with the annulments, like, I find that with the folks that I work through this system with, it ends up being a more healing process than anything. Sure, you got to go through some of the difficulties and trials of unpacking what went wrong or what didn't go wrong or all that. But in the end, like, it gives you the opportunity to hand it all over to the Lord and say, Lord, this is yours, and I ask you to redeem, heal, and restore it in whatever way you want to. So.
Yeah, and even couples who are married and then just need to go through a little bit of backtracking to make it all fit right within the church.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So, cool story, guys.
thanks.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I don't think there was too much trouble.
See, I'm not trouble.
Let me ask you the highlight, since we all went to Italy. Highlight in Italy. Do you both have the same highlight?
The same what?
Highlight.
Highlight.
Yeah, just Italy.
Highlight. Gotcha. I was like, highlight.
New
like the game?
word for you, Kate. Highlight.
Well, I can tell you what mine was.
Yes.
Okay, it was, I think, it might have been the first Mass that we had when we were in Florence. It was just off in a conference room in the hotel.
Yeah.
And they were doing the consecration of the host, and Father Joe holds it up, and suddenly just down the hall, just randomly a bell rings. And it was completely unintended, unplanned. Like, where did that come from?
Someone timed that.
So that one sticks out in my head. I don't know why of everything that we saw, I mean, all the history and beautiful, it was that first Mass just in a hotel conference room. That was just so...
God's timing again, right?
It was like goosebumps when that happened. It was, oh my gosh. What was that?
I liked wandering at night with groups of people.
Yes.
Gelato is usually at the end of that.
Gelato
Yeah.
gelato is usually there. And I did find my favorite gelato It's a nice dark chocolate gelato.
Well, we have free gelato whenever we go back to Rome from the gelato stand owner that I befriended.
Steve made friends with the gelato guy. Steve made friends with the leather salesman.
And with the pickpockets.
And with the pickpockets.
That is true. That is true. They
Got up close and personal.
they know me very well.
And especially your back pocket.
Yes.
Yep. But nothing was there. It was all okay.
Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. It's so good to be able to hear your story, and I pray and hope that it gives encouragement to others who might have been in your situation to enter into this conversation, because it is one that can be so helpful and so healing, and obviously bore great fruit for both of you. So, well, why don't we hand this over, as we always do, to our Blessed Mother as we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And Trapper, Steve, and Kate, may Almighty God bless you and all of our listeners. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.